Okay, the work session will come to order. Mr. Junkin?
Yes, sir. Everybody's got their agenda today. What I try to do to get things started out, I put together basically the pay plan by pay grade. And as you go through it, it's the first handout in there, it walks you through what each pay grade, what the positions are that go with that pay grade. And consequently, as you look across, it tells you what the various pay items are. I mean, as far as minimum, maximum, midpoint, it pulls out the current average insurance. It pulls out the retirement contribution based on what we're paying and their salary, so that you can see the total compensation that we're offering to each employee in different pay grades. You know, rather than go to the back. We get totals, estimated totals, on the very last page of the handout. But this gives you the overview of what we've got going on for our employees right now. In the schedule today, we wanted to start out with our next person on the agenda would be Tina, I apologize, Tyndall.
That's whatever is fine with me, yes, sir.
Tina, Miss Tyndall's gonna talk to us about the insurance benefits we got and give us an overview and walk us through where we're at there and maybe give us a little comparative information to be considered. And I'll turn over the.
Ready? Okay. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. You can interrupt at any time with a question, and I can be as brief or as long. I know we're on a time limit, so I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. The current benefits are medical, dental, vision, basic life insurance, additional life insurance the employees can purchase themselves, long-term disability, and short-term disability, as well as an employee assistance program. One of the things that you all have asked every year is, how does this compare to the city and the county? And we do have some information from both the city and the county on how that compares. The city currently charges their employees $25 a pay period for a $600 deductible plan. None of this is in front of you. This is all just sort of a verbal overview. The county charges around $25 a pay period for their plan. They offer a $500 deductible, a $750 deductible, and a $1,000 deductible. Ora said that the $500 deductible will go away this year because they are trying to move deductibles up. Whereas the employees with joint water and sewer have the option of a $500, a $1,500, or a $3,000 deductible, and the premium for that runs between $54 and $70 a pay period. So in comparison to the county and the city, joint water and sewer offers higher deductibles and the employees pay a higher cost. We can get additional information from the city and county. There is a process to get that, and we can certainly work with Commissioner Browning and Mayor Harvey to get that full information so we can review it prior to renewal for your review. Do you all have any questions about that specifically?
So they have a lower deductible and a lower cost.
Yes, sir. Of course, remember, joint water and sewer is significantly smaller than either of those. I think the city's around 300 to 400 employees, and the county is in the 600 to 700 range. And so you are looking at joint water is around 140, and of that we have anywhere from 150 to 115 to 125 that accept the benefit. Some people do waive due to other coverage.
Is it based on our claims? And
Yes, sir,
everything too?
it is. And one of the things about being small is that your claims mean more. So when you have a more significant claims year, then you're obviously dealing with a smaller pool of money to pay those claims. So last year we did receive over a 40% increase, and if you remember, we moved from the current Blue Cross and Blue Shield to United Healthcare and saved a significant amount of money, but still had to spend more than you spent the year prior.
Does the county and the city pay for family benefit and also the spouse benefit?
They do pay a certain percentage towards the spouse, children, and full family benefits, as does joint water and sewer. They do pay at a higher rate for those lower deductibles than joint water and sewer.
So they pay more than 90%?
They do, actually. Well, it just depends on what that percentage is. I don't think we're paying 90% of the family currently. 75%.
75%, okay.
So they are more in the 85 range. I believe that Ora said well, we didn't get the dependent information. She only gave us the single. So she just gave us verbally what they had, and again, there's a process we would go through to get that information from them in full, and we're happy to report back to you on that.
I think wow, for some reason. I think at renewal time, that would be beneficial information to have. Side-by-side comparison.
Now,
Not for today, but, you know.
what is the process you all would like to go to? Obviously, or when we meet about renewal, we're talking about hard numbers and quick decisions. Obviously, because the group is the size that it is, we can only get that information 60 days prior, which leaves us with about 6 weeks for the entire process of renewal. So would you all like to have another work session to review this information in, say, December or even January to talk about that prior?
Yeah, we need to have it as early as possible in
Okay.
January.
Okay, in January.
Because at that point in time, we'll have the new commission and all new commissioners.
Okay.
And you'll have, this is so that current commissioners can be brought up to speed on this information. But when we go into, and part of the issue that we've had, is we have brand-new commissioners, and they feel rushed into making decisions for which they haven't had any background information. And it's like, you need to make a decision today,
Right.
and we just need to kind of back that process up, but we need to do it with the full commission.
Okay. So would we schedule a separate work session, or would you like to just add it
I
to your
think
normal?
probably at this time, we've scheduled, I believe, the first meeting, the 10th, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Jimmy, do you recall?
Yes.
Is the second Thursday.
It should be about, it's so that the city and the county can decide who they're gonna put on our commission
Okay,
without having problems, which we've had in the past. And so the 10th would be the first meeting in which they would be sworn in and things like that, which would, if my dates are correct, the 10th.
It is the 10th.
And then probably a work session, the next meeting would be the 24th. So probably a work session prior to the 24th. And then
Okay.
I believe we do the renewal in March, is that correct?
the renewal is for March, but we usually meet in late January to discuss that renewal and make those decisions. So we would want
So
to
we
have a
would be
work session
crashing up
prior
against
to
the
that.
date anyway.
Yes,
That's a problem. So we'll need to plan and if you can get with management
Mm-hmm.
staff, a date, and we'll have to have a special called work session
after the 10th of
after the
January.
10th.
Okay,
So I would say the following week, and then let them have some time to think about what they're gonna do. And then we'll have the meeting on the 24th in which they have to make the decisions. It's just the nature, way the commissioners come on to the commission. I think this next time, we won't have any new commissioners in 2020.
okay. So the city and,
We always have the county and the city. folks.
Well, we'll have that one, but other than that.
I don't think we did.
Huh?
Yeah, I think.
Commissioner Turnbull's
It's-
it's-
Okay, so we'll have one more time that will,
Unless he's reappointed.
yeah, depending on,
okay,
how that
we'll be
works.
prepared for that. We'll get with management, work on a work session thereafter. That way there's ample time to talk about these things, review anything. So if there is anything that anyone wants us to follow up on, we can have it ready for the full meeting.
yeah. When do you get the claims information? And,
We receive the claims information and the renewal 60 days prior, so we will get it right at the January 1st, and we send it out, and then the bid process starts.
it would be good if that information can be shared to the commissioners as early as possible, so they'll have some background before they walk into the work session.
Could we not renew insurance for a 15-month period or something to get us away from that January timeframe? Instead of doing 12 months?
We actually did that a couple of years ago. It used to be a January 1st renewal, which was very difficult for the staff because that's when they take the biggest, share of their vacation
But we
time.
did one of those, got it a little further removed. I mean, we did one more, just picked a year like next year, did a 15-month time frame. So in 19, the 15 months carried on into April or May of 20 instead of January of 20.
Right. Well, we moved it from a January 1st to a March 1st to get away from the holidays, but no matter how much we move it, we will never be able to get outside that 60-day window because of the size of the group.
But we could get away from get a little distance between the new commissioners coming on.
Yes.
Every year is.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's okay to, in what you present us.
Okay.
Present us an option, for, pushing the renewal date a little bit farther.
Because almost every year, there's gonna be some new commission at
That's
some point.
right.
I mean, at some point, there's always gonna be.
Just to let them get on board for a minute before they're bombarded
right.
with
That
this
mean-
decision-making. I see.
I mean, that's not the only thing that they get hit with right off, because we go right into a budget cycle.
Right. Now, thinking of your budget, does your time of wanting it to be April or May, if we could get a carrier to move in that direction, do either of those months matter in regards to the budget?
I would think, let management look at it. I think it's farther away from the first that we can get to make these decisions.
Okay.
And couple it, why don't you look
First of,
January?
Well, we renew March 1st, but January 1st is when the new commissioners start, and very quickly thereafter, we're having a conversation in late January, asking everyone to make some
Well,
pretty tough
see,
decisions.
Part of the thing is that for budgeting purpose, they need to know what the healthcare costs are gonna be.
Right.
When they're preparing their budget, and that's why Jimmy needs to kinda sit with his staff and come up with what you think the optimal date is. You know,
The
that
further
the
away you get
commissioners,
from
the
January-
further you can get it, but at the same time, you need to be able to punch that number into your budget process and, have it solid.
yeah, the further away from January we get, the tougher it's gonna be for us to
That's correct.
finalize, so.
In addition, the insurance companies are not gonna give free months, so there's gonna be an additional cost for every month that we ask them to move it forward. So it might end up being cost prohibitive and a moot point after all,
Well,
but we
you'll
can
have it only
certainly
in
ask,
1
meaning
year.
if we ask them to move the renewal from March to, say, April or May, it's gonna cause the rate to be a little different.
Well, what Jimmy will have to do is, and his staff is gonna have to, it should only be 1 year that they'll have that extra cost.
Right, that's
Okay,
right.
and he'll have to find the money within his budget to cover that.
And we'll see how much it is. It may be worth it, it may not. Or they might be in the giving spirit. We might have a better claims year, and we may be able to negotiate that, which would be great. We can always negotiate when claims are good. We're a little upside down. Doesn't
Well-
mean we won't try. So, yes, we'll work on getting that done.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say something. I think, we ought to open conversation with the city and the county for having just one carrier for everybody.
So that has been discussed, and it is discussed every single year. And the objection is that everyone has their own, they have their own preferences. And so it becomes difficult to get everyone to agree, but it is something that is talked about every year. Why can joint water not go on the cities? Why can't you go on the counties? And one of the things you have to remember too is that the city and the county are both self-funded. So although you do have your premiums every month, they also may have a bill at the end of the year that they have to pay. In the past, and I'm sorry Commissioner Browning is not here, in the past, the counties had to write $1 million check at the end of the year to the insurance carrier because of overages and cost. And on a truly self-funded plan, you have that. On your plan, the insurance company takes all the risk and hits you with a renewal at the end of the year for a bad claims year. On the city of the county side, if they have a bad claims year, they may get a bill. And so once you add that bill back into the premium and you look at it overall, joint water and sewer year after year has continued to have better pricing
Have we looked at self-funded plans in the past?
We look at self-funded plans every year. Self-funded plans, when you first write them, are based on your medical conditions. If your medical conditions are high, then your rates are going to be high because they're trying to make sure they get it as close as they need to. Well, we've had claims issues every single year, so the fully funded plans have been the lower cost. So that is what we've chosen every year, but we look at self-funded as an option, multiple self-funded options every single year. Yes, sir.
I
So
know
that's not off the table.
Okay, yeah, then we need to look at that in the first time we look at this in January.
And in all actuality, that would not be my role. I don't even know that it would be, I don't even know if it would be your role. It may be a commissioner's role to have those conversations.
The other, to Alan and Jim. And
Yeah,
see-
but the thing, right now, you know, is really kind of key that the commissioners understand the advantages of being,
Together?
together, if there is, because there may not be. They may enjoy us being in there if we have a better claims record than they do. Or it may be better for us because we don't have that, since we're not self-insured,
The risk pool's different.
yeah,
Correct.
yeah, we have, that's correct. So,
Let me get with the others, and when the mayor and Commissioner Browning get back, if we'll get them to make sure staff knows to share data with us, we'll try to get with Tina and work out historically, what have they seen happen? How has it benefited? Why is ours always better? And what would happen if we switched to their version of insurance, or if they switched to ours
okay,
collectively?
the other thing that you want to address is where they become a fully insured.
That's what-
Are they eligible for it?
When you go into the self-insured market, you almost can't come back out. And at their size, they wouldn't, because if they're able to, there are multiple measures that they've put in, such as the clinic that they have with Southeast Georgia Health System. There are multiple things that they've put in place that they're hoping long-term is going to curb those claims. And so ideally, they're hoping that one day, the cost is gonna go in the other direction. Those types of things don't always pay off right away because they're long-term solutions. So they're not gonna come out of the self-funded market, because if they, I don't even know that they could go into the fully funded market with the size that they are, that it would make sense for them. But you end up, when you're in the self-funded market, you have to pay claims after a certain time, and they would still end up paying more at the end of their contract, plus the amount for the fully funded, so it probably has never made financial sense for them to do that. So that was a long version of probably not.
Okay, no, it's just, see, I guess from my perspective, we just, the three heads, or you and Alan and the city manager need to talk about these issues and
I will, I will. I would certainly like for the mayor and Commissioner Browning
oh,
to,
yeah, I don't disagree with that.
the pump is primed.
And you would have several legal issues. I mean, you'd want to make sure, and you have to make sure that the carriers are going to allow the entities to merge. So there would be quite a bit of work to put together. It would probably take a while for all of those pieces to fit together. But first, you want to know if it's possible, is that door open? Could you do it? And it may not be, I would imagine, and I'm just guessing, but it's probably a good guess, that the city and the county are not interested in merging. But the question of could you merge with one of them may be a separate question,
Okay.
and probably a more viable option, if anything.
We'll talk.
Is their dental self-funded also?
I don't believe their dental is self-funded, no, sir. I believe it's a fully funded plan.
And the vision's not either.
No, sir, it is a fully funded plan as well.
Jimmy, when you talk to them, we'd like to see what their plans are too, what they're paying everything.
And we have looked at their dental. The good thing about dental and vision is they're always within pennies of each other, so that's not a lot of premium. It's the medical that's the more significant number. When we compare apples to apples on the benefits, I mean, we do better than they do in some cases. But in most years, with those overages, because of the self-funded, joint water and sewer has fared better financially, just because of those larger claims. Do you all have any other questions, or is there anything else that I can provide to you to help you move on with the benefits conversation today?
You just insurance, right?
Sir?
You just insurance.
Just
portion.
insurance, yes, sir.
The healthcare, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, just one other thing, for the January, kind of have the history of our healthcare payments, cost for about 5 years.
And we do try to give an overview so all of the new commissioners can see where we were and why the choices were made. And we'll add a little more information to that.
Yeah, the thing that's kind of rough on the employees is, when you change carriers and then you change back.
Yes,
And we've done that once, right?
we've done that multiple times.
Multiple times.
And we keep revisiting the well, but each time we do, the savings is to the tune of anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 a year. And so to preserve their cost, and what you would hope is that an insurance company would get smart enough to realize if we just don't hit them so hard, they won't leave and we could keep a long-term relationship, but they don't. It's money in and money out because of the size of the group. So because the group is so small, when the carrier looks at the money that they spent, they say, unfortunately, underwriting, who they're paid to preserve the money, says this is how much of a renewal we need to keep you. And if not, another carrier says, hey, we'll take that 100-person group, and they give us a better rate and we move. So that's unfortunately the nature of the beast and how we save money. I wish it wasn't, but that's just gonna be our best way. We do try to have individual meetings with the employees. We're always available to answer questions, but there's always a little casualty, and my drug's covered a different way, or, but at the end of the day, we were looking at a 43% increase, and so we were glad to find something that was less, and I'm sorry that they have so much movement in their plans just about every other year.
I got a question that's maybe along those lines, and I know you probably got certain people that we go to year in, year out in state.
Yes.
Didn't they change the rule where you could go out of state now? Could we talk to some out-of-state carriers that would be reputable, that would be, maybe give them some added pressure to come back to us with a?
So the president signed a bill that says that you can go across state lines and you can also buy into association plans. And so he's allowing that to happen. However, the insurance companies aren't selling it. And so although it is allowed, the insurance companies haven't found that it's very profitable, because if they're looking, for instance, if I live in Athens, Georgia, my rates are going to be lower than if I live in Glynn County because of the network and the reimbursement rates in the health system and the hospitals up there. They're a little closer to Atlanta. And so it's interesting how the rates vary across the state. Well, if you can imagine how much they vary across the state, imagine how much they vary across the country. So the insurance companies cannot actuarially figure out how much that rate should be for you to be on a plan in Brunswick, Georgia, but written from a Blue Cross of Wyoming. So they're not there yet. And even when they are there, there's going to be a lot of information we're going to have to make sure of. The mandates may be different, what will happen to the Affordable Care Act. And as far as the association plans are, or the association organizations are ready and willing to write those plans. However, the insurance companies say, well, wait a second, I don't know that we want to write these. And there are a few association plans, but a lot of times that risk pool is high. And we've talked about this in years past. So if you take a plumbing company and a CPA firm and you put them together, one may do better than the other, and what happens when one's sicker than the other. So you look at something like an association plan of all municipalities. Well, they may run well, they may run poor. If they run well, you want to be a part of them. And then the next year when they don't run well and you could get a better deal if you leave them, you jump ship and you go off. So they have contracts when you sign up with them that you have to stay for a certain number of years to keep that hop on and hop off. So we're not there yet. I can't wait until we are, because it'll be a wonderful thing for the market. But that across state lines is just not an opportunity for us
Okay.
yet.
That's interesting, because that assumes that all healthcare is delivered local.
Well, they can only figure out what that pool is. For instance, our area, believe it or not, is not just looking at our health system. Our area is based on Jacksonville Care and Savannah Care, because the insurance companies are able to look at the claims and see where people travel for their care. So it wouldn't localize just the claims. It would look at the claims data from the usage of the plans in a particular area. So it is more broad from that aspect than just what the local provider's reimbursement rate would be.
Okay, when you present in January, the first look at this, can you kind of give us where our health care is being delivered?
Probably not.
Well, you can by the claims, right?
Well, we don't actually see the claims because it is a fully funded plan. So legally, what we're able to see is how much you spend in premium and how much you spend in claims, and any large claimants over a certain amount. But they wouldn't tell us where that health care is being delivered for the most part. Legally, they do not provide that information if it is a fully funded plan.
I don't understand.
It's all based on the size of your group. It's more work for the insurance company. Somebody at the insurance company would have to sit down and let that be their job to keep up with that data and provide it to people that ask for it. And when they legally don't have to do something, they just don't. So we ask for that information so we know, but they're really all about their bottom line and not as much about our information. We could always survey the employees, but I will tell you, just in working with them and the staff at Teamwork and the conversations that we've had with them over the years, it is very much localized.
Okay.
What about a 2-year plan versus annual renewals?
So a 2-year plan says to an insurance company, we don't know what's gonna happen to our group. This is what we've had in the past couple of years. Could we get a 2-year rate? The rate would be so high that we would never know if we were better off with just a 1 year or not. So we only go from year to year because we haven't had a good enough year yet to say we're so great. Would you take us for 2 years at a better rate?
Okay.
But that would be wonderful.
That
Yes.
sounds like interest on a loan. The interest rate goes down along with the loan is, because you're at greater risk.
Okay, we need to kind of move on. This
Okay.
has been very interesting. I think we probably talk about it for about the next 4 hours. But
I
that's
understand.
what we'll do probably the first time we talk about it in January.
All right, so we'll have this information and we'll run it by the staff as well. Any other questions at all?
Not right now. Thank you,
Okay,
Tina.
thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Commissioners, for the defined benefit plans, I took our copy of our summary benefits and I obtained copies of the summary benefits from the city and the county as they have been amended. When the Joint Water and Sewer Commission first formed, we looked at several methods of providing retirement for employees. And we finally settled with, or didn't settle, but we selected GMA. And to get that instituted, there was a provision called a terminated vested benefits for all of the city and the county employees that were transferred to the Joint Water and Sewer Commission, so that any vesting that an employee had with the city or with the county remained with the city or county in their pension plans. Any unvested time that the employees had earned was transferred to the JWSC in terms of that employee's start date and their salary history, but there was no funding transferred to the Joint Water and Sewer Commission. So and their final pension is based on their history with the Joint Water Sewer Commission to determine their benefit. And then if there was vesting with the city or the county pays that portion of their final benefit and the JWSC makes up the rest. So what actually happened with that was we absorbed a huge liability at the get-go with no funding for employees For instance, the city had a 5-year cliff in their vesting schedule. So an employee that had worked 4.5 years had no vested rights with the Joint Water and Sewer Commission. So we assumed all of the pension liability for that 4.5 years of service with no funding being transferred to us. So we've, from the get-go, had in excess of $1 million unfunded liability in our pension plan. As of the last actuarial date of January 1st of 2018, our unfunded liability is $1.7 million.
So our liability is 1.7 million that we don't have the funds
Pardon?
for?
Pardon me?
Our liability is 1.7 million.
Our
for what we-
our unfunded liability is, meaning that's the amount of present value of pension payouts versus the value of the pension portfolios.
Okay. Say somebody worked for Brunswick for 10 years before they came with us, so they were vested at Brunswick.
They would have been 100% vested in the time, in the service years that they had at the city.
Now, is Brunswick gonna pay them something when they turn 65?
Brunswick will pay, they'll be paid by the city of Brunswick in proportion to the time, to the Brunswick schedule was average salary times 1.8% times years of service. So that number of years of service times 1.8 will be paid by the city. The
And-
balance of their pension is paid
And the
by
amount of their
the
vested time, did it just roll over to us? So if they were 10 years there, did they automatically have 10 years of us?
Yes,
Okay. And that's where the unfunded,
that's basically
Came
where
from.
the bulk of the unfunded liability came from.
okay.
Of course, there's always going to be some level of unfunded liability because the actuarial computations are done in January usually. We provide census information in August and receive it in January based on the prior year. So with merit increases and so on, our pension liability now is greater than it was 6 months ago, for instance.
Is it going down, though, the unfunded liability?
The unfunded liability has stayed pretty steady, actually. It's grown a little bit, but it hasn't, but the total amount of unfunded liability stays about the same, but the liability that was transferred to us by the city and the county continues to decrease because that's being amortized in our annual contributions. It's a little complicated, but it's,
If we were starting from scratch, we wouldn't have any unfunded liability, is that correct?
technically, yeah, yes,
So it's $1.7 million that we're short.
right now, yes.
So how do we get that built up, eliminated?
It's,
How do we pay it off, I think?
there's an amortization of that amount built into our annual contributions. So it continues to go down, but our pension, but it's somewhat offset by our liability going up in the subsequent year. So
Is that because more people become vested?
more people become vested, more people there's additional years of service and so on.
Now, is it because also we changed from 1.8% of average monthly compensation to 2% of the
No,
final average salary?
that would be due to the transfer in of employees.
Yeah, right.
But that, GMA.
So
in
we
their
automatically
computations-
increase,
Pardon me?
we automatically increase the liability for those individuals because not only for the years, but also for the benefit of 2% of final average salary versus 1.8 of average monthly compensation.
On those that came from the city.
But
Right,
our annual contributions are designed to keep reducing that. All else staying equal, our annual contributions would bring that unfunded liability down to zero at some point.
What is that point, John? How many years out is it?
I think it's amortized over 20 years or 30 years, one or the other. I don't recall right offhand.
Okay, thank you.
How do we get from Brunswick and Glynn County being vested at 10 years to us being partially vested at 3? How was that decision made?
When well, when the Joint Water and Sewer Commission was formed, there was a tenet that no employee that transferred from either government to the Joint Water Sewer Commission would be harmed in any way in terms of their benefit package. So we did this with the health insurance package too, and the pension and that. And at the time we formed, one of the major, you'll see that both of the city and the county plans have both changed. The county changed in their vesting. When we formed, they had a vesting period that lasted over the 10 years of employment. You had some percentage at 3 years and then an increasing percentage up to 10. When they amended their plan, they went to the 10-year cliff that you see on here. This is the plan as it is for employees coming in now.
So they have adjusted their plan over time to make it not as competitive, and ours has stayed.
Yes, so the county adjusted theirs as of January 1 of 16. And the major change in that was the vesting schedule. And the city still has a 5-year cliff. Once you reach that 5-year point, you're 100% vested.
Oh, yeah, it does, I'm sorry. I looked wrong column.
So
Are both of those through GMA?
Because of that, starting at 3 years and for the county being some percentage vested and the city being 5-year cliff, ours was designed to start at 3 years and finish at 5 years. That's how that percentage came about.
I guess the cities was GMA, isn't it? Brunswick's was GMA just like ours is.
No, each of them have their own pension plans.
Yeah, but I mean, it's under
They're
GMA.
not GMA, no,
They don't,
no.
because GMA has different plans.
But GMA has a master plan that's approved by the IRS. And within that master plan, you can go through various sections of it and determine your vesting schedule, your average compensation. There's kind of it's almost like an a la carte menu of their master plan.
So a new hire for the city today, they get into a pension plan too? I was under the impression the city had done away with their pension plan.
No, their pension, as far as I saw in their amended documents, they're still covered by their pension plan.
Okay, I must have misunderstood what I was.
But from the plans as they were when Joint Water Sewer formed, the major change in the county plan was the vesting schedule. The biggest change in the city plan was, you'll see it, right now it's 3% of compensation. The employees pay 3% of their compensation as a contribution to the plan. Their plan was fully paid for by the city when we formed.
Yeah, so they,
You don't have all the choices, the à la carte menu that's available to us from GMA, correct?
Actually, I do. I didn't bring it here. Our summary plan has all of the various things that you can choose from in it, and it has each one that we elected or did not elect has an X in it. So I could print that off and send it.
I would like you to share it with all the commissioners so that I mean, I'm sure that we'll talk about this some more in the spring, but this may be a real kind of hard thing to answer, and I'll back off on the question if it is, but do we have any idea how much consideration new employees give to the pension plan in deciding whether they want to work for us or not?
I really couldn't answer that question. I think it would kind of depend on the employee's age at the time of hire.
I was gonna say
That would
exactly
probably be
that.
the biggest consideration.
Not true.
The youngsters, the youngsters. are
ask
gonna
Andrew
live
and ask Jimmy, get two different.
The youngsters are gonna live forever. It's not an impact on them. I don't even think health insurance is an impact on them, a lot of times. But the older they get, I think it is, like John says, the closer you get to retirement, the more you think about it, when you come on board.
Well, I think that would play into, you know, the consideration is if to change the vesting schedule.
If we change it, the ones that already vested, that would stay
That in
put.
effect, yeah.
They're grandfathered in. It's just,
Already happened.
Actually, probably the ones that are already hired.
okay,
We'll be able to change it for the ones that are already hired.
okay.
Yes, because
Depending on the language.
in our plan, is the day somebody is hired, they're a participant in the plan. Where with the city and the county, there's a 12-month waiting period to become a participant of the plan.
But we can
which
change that too.
Which is different from the vesting schedule.
We can change that too.
Going forward, yes.
Now,
Yes. Yes. Change it going forward, rather than what we just.
okay. Everybody's offered the opportunity to have a 401K type plan through GMA,
It's
correct?
For governments, it's technically a 457B.
Okay.
And it's a little bit different than a 401K. The contribution levels are a little different. But everyone has the opportunity to participate in that.
Is that from the date of hire?
Yes. Yes. And that's completely elective on the employee's part. It's made available to them, but the JWSC participates in that in no way.
And,
We don't match them.
No, sir.
yeah, I don't, you know, it's all because we have a,
Because we have the defined pension, the defined benefit plan, we
Yeah.
don't do
Yeah, I was
anything.
clarifying.
I guess where I was coming from, is there a limit on how much they can put in that?
15,000, I believe it's 15% of income up to $15,000 a
I
year.
think it's 18 now, I might be mistaken.
It may have changed, I think,
What percent of our employees participate in that? What percent of our employees participate in that?
I'm not really sure, maybe, I'm guessing about 20% to some extent. Some of them are like $10 to pay period, but they are participating in it.
Okay.
How do we, the first page in here, this Excel spreadsheet, that's the actual pay grades and the salaries associated with them, how did we get this?
All right.
What kind of survey do we do, what kind of,
It wasn't a survey per se. What I did was take our pay plan as it is today.
Oh,
no, I'm saying, how do we come up with the,
Where'd the pay plan
Raise.
come from?
right?
Oh, I'm sorry, that Condrey did a study, we hired the consultant Condrey back in 2014, that did the pay plan, and basically this is the result of their work.
So how did they, I mean, what was the methodology to put
They,
this
They
together?
studied,
They comparing us against other governmental entities, or are they comparing us against,
and they,
you know, local private industries, how is that?
they compared us to other government entities.
other
They
utilities.
also took the job description for each position and best fit that to other organizations for the particular positions. And they looked at the duties and responsibilities and the requirements for positions.
Who did that? What was the name of the company?
Condrey,
Condrey Associates.
Con-
Condrey, C-O-N-D-R-E-Y and
I've
Associates.
got their contact information.
Well, the survey is available online, isn't it?
We've got that, but I mean.
And
you
I
wanna talk
think
to them?
you all were mailed a copy of it, emailed.
If you wanna ask Condrey more detailed questions, we got theirs.
I was just curious what the methodology was. I mean, do they, you know, if you're comparing benefits against other governmental organizations and pay against private organizations, or conversely, then, you know, you're not comparing everything against.
They looked at everything.
We don't have anybody in pay grade 1 through 7 at all employed?
Not at this time,
Okay. What would they be doing?
nothing apparently. I don't have any jobs, I mean, I can't imagine unless we had a very menial, low-level job. We used to have a groundskeeper that would do, you know, just picking up trash and keeping the grass cut around the facilities there was pay grade 4 over there, Andrew? But we don't have that.
You ought to have pay grade 0 being the commissioners.
When we start out, start somebody, kind of in general, how do they land from the minimum to maximum scale? I mean, I know that's a loaded question, or, you know.
Typically for the hourly guys, unless they walk in with a lot of, into a skill position, whether it's they demonstrate or can provide evidence of a great deal of skill to do the job they're doing, they start at the minimum. With the salaried or exempt folks, you lean more towards their experience and where they're at to figure out where they fall within the pay grade as far as their abilities. But even on the technical hourly folks, for example, you got a maintenance person shows up that can weld, that can do millwright work, can do electrical work, can do minor controls work. That person sounds like they're pretty skilled and ready to hit the deck running. We might give them well up into their pay grade, maybe half of the, or the midpoint to get them started, because they bring a lot of skills to the table already.
So we don't have like a defined policy that says we don't hire above the midpoint or anything. It's not like some places they say,
There is a max hire.
sir,
There is a max hire.
what's the max hire as a percentage of the range?
I think it's 1/3 of minimum. Minimum plus 1/3, I believe.
Is the
I think it's
maximum?
more than that.
Minimum plus 1/3.
I think it's more than that.
So if it's,
So it's not just a scale on the scale of minimum and maximum. I mean, if the minimum and maximum is,
there is a stated amount for max hire.
you don't know what that is off the top of your head. That's fine.
I just had one final thing on the pension. Just for information, our annual contribution right now to that plan is $560,400 for the year. When we prepare payroll, or when we prepare the budget, we translate that to a percentage for allocation to divisions.
Has that gone up every year?
Yes, sir.
560 is what now? Say it one more time.
$560,000 a year for the defined benefit plan.
That's not what we spent to date.
That's our annual contribution from, pardon me?
35%
In the,
in the 457.
Oh, okay.
And what's our total salary cost?
I don't know, I'd have to look that up.
hang on,
On this,
financials.
on this spreadsheet, is the health insurance based on an individual rate or a family rate? We say health insurance costs?
It's based on the average per employee right now, the way they're configured. Some go for individuals, some go for them and their spouse, some go for the family. But we took the average to come up with the number.
Oh, 12,907.
Yes, sir.
And then the retirement contribution, is that based on the midpoint annual
It's
salary?
based on, the midpoint, yes, sir.
Okay. Like at the wastewater plant, where are those people, Jimmy?
The who?
The wastewater plant, people who work at the wastewater plant.
Look on the, page 2 at the top, that'd be pay grade 12. Wastewater treatment plant operator 3.
That's somebody with a class 3 license.
Yep, and if you go down to the next step, wastewater WW treatment operator 2 is grade 13. And if we were to get a grade 1, then a grade 15,
So if somebody gets more license, they automatically just move to the next category.
yeah.
And what does it take to run the Academy Creek plant?
You gotta have a grade 2 there at all times to take samples, cause we gotta have. a
And how many
grade 2.
twos do we have there?
I think we had 12 total operators. I think of those 12, I think 6 of them have a grade 2 or grade 1. Cause Mark and Alvin and, one other, yeah, Ray Marsh have a grade 1 license, and then I think 3 or 4 people have a grade 2 license. And we are including it in every one of the grade 3 operators' performance reviews, that their goal is to get a grade 2 license so that we have some additional flexibility.
And if they get paid overtime, this is broken out for an hourly rate?
Yeah, they're hourly.
The previous question on what is our total salaries of budgeted regular wages was 7.3 million.
How many people is that, 164? How many people we have?
63, 64, something like that.
63, I think.
So when they go from a lab 1 to a lab 2 to a lab 1, show me what that increases it from. As soon as they get that certification, they get the increase?
Yes, sir. They submit the certification, and Mark would then put in a request for them to be bumped up. And then they get at least 5%, even if they're, because the pay grades overlap, so they would get a minimum of 5%. And if it's more than 5% to get to the bottom of the next pay grade, they get the bottom of the next
Okay.
pay grade.
So these individuals, when they get a certificate, they get an increase?
Yes, sir.
Generally, yeah. Okay, good.
Okay, we have 10 minutes left.
Let me, there's one thing in here about school. We pay for school if somebody wants to go back to college or something. Education assistance and incentives.
Has to be approved by the executive director. It's not first come, first serve, whoever wants it. It's, you gotta be approved, it's gotta be something that would be beneficial to the utility.
Yeah.
So you can't go get a philosophy degree
Right.
as an operator and think you're gonna get reimbursed for that. And you are required to pay for it up front, and then when you get your grades, you get a percentage based off of what your final grade was.
The percentage, how's that?
I believe it's 80% for a C, 90% for a B, and 100% if you make an A. If you make a D or an F, you don't get paid anything.
Does it include the books? It includes the books too, doesn't it?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Good. Do we have anybody doing that?
We have a couple of people that are currently in the program, yes, sir. What we tend to have more of is people that go, instead of necessarily taking a full load, they're taking one class at a time. So I know we have a water operator that's currently taking some biology courses out at Coastal Georgia right now. And we have some, I think, somebody in customer service that's taking their MPA, Master's of Public Administration program. So Olivia's doing that.
Do all the employees know we have this?
Well, I don't know that we've made an official announcement, but it does get around pretty quickly that it is available to people.
It is on page 4, the benefits summary, the educational assistance, and it's in the employee handbook, the HR standards of practice.
But basically what we ask you is if you plan on going, please give us a little bit of heads up so that we can try to get that money budgeted into the year, so.
Have we ever thought about going to Coastal College and trying to get some interns to work for us?
We have had interns in the past to do some stuff, yes, sir. We've went to both Coastal College to get interns, and then for, other intern type work, we went through the Brunswick Job Corps. We've had some success with that, and then naturally some problems with that, but, we actually have a member of our staff now that was an intern through the College of Coastal Georgia. So we have, already started seeing the benefit of that program. Because some of the programs out at Coastal Georgia require a student to have an internship for graduation. So we have taken advantage of that.
Yeah, I personally had 2 interns from out there, and I mean, it worked out good for me. And then we've had a lot of the Job Corps students that work with us, and that's been a pretty successful program as well.
I mean, if they're science majors, or biology majors, or math majors, or public administration, they might like a job
Absolutely,
if they knew that it was available.
absolutely. We've actually participated in their job fairs and stuff in the past as well, trying to recruit some of those employees.
The college does have a job fair coming up, I think, in February for internships.
Were they paid internships or unpaid?
That's just for people, that employers that are looking for internships?
I mean, ours.
In the past, we have paid our interns.
Oh, you did, okay.
I don't think we paid them grand amounts of money, but they did get a little bit for being here.
They were grade one.
Yeah. There's your grade one employee.
Cindy,
Yes, sir.
um,
I know we're running short of time.
if I can, get the commission to, agree, can you stay and then, we'll cover HR policies in the discussion portion of the meeting?
Sure.
Can I do that? All right. So we'll conclude the benefits and compensation workshop for this afternoon, and we'll take 5 minutes, get ready for the